So the very first DLC for Nickelodeon All Star Brawl just dropped today. It's a free update for alternate costumes for every single one of the fighters. Let's check out the reveal trailer. Nickelodeon All Star Brawl?
Are you tired of your favorite brawler's same old look?
I am.
Have you ever wanted to stand out and be different? Or showcase your
Yeah.
stylistic side? Show your friends just how
Alright.
you really are?
I like how 90s this is looking.
Well, we have just the thing for you.
Oh snap! Ah, cool, alright.
With the Nickelodeon All Star Brawl
Super DLC 3000.
20 new signature outfits.
First thing call it Super DLC 2000, because putting 2000 and stuff back in the 90s was a big deal.
Flavors.
Ah, cool, alright. So, we had seen Zim's wig, actually, in the data mine, but I hadn't seen his, like, human eyes, so that's cool. Alright, different color Reptar. Lots of cool hats for characters. Oh, what's Korra got? Couldn't tell.
SpongeBob is looking like a #1.
The soda drink hat, man. Smitty, Werben, Jaegerman, Johnson. There we go. Parents to be got. Looks like Christmas hats. Yeah, I love the classic turtles. The Mirage comic turtles are really cool again. Alternate color swap Danny.
Download now and receive a month's supply of Krabby Patties and a coupon for powdered toast.
Free gifts, not really. $0.00. Shipping and handling because it's free. No shipping and handling because it's free. It was funny. It was a funny little trailer. I like it. Alright, cool. So this wasn't really a surprise update, as the official Nick Brawl game Twitter had been saying alternate costumes would be coming very soon for the past few days, and teasing out the look of some of the fighters' alts, like SpongeBob's soda drink hat here. Also, Pariah Mentality on Twitter wrote me, I was watching Ludwig's first YouTube stream, and in his intro he said something interesting. He was saying how Thursday he has a sponsored Nick All-Stars stream, but then he says how they might be releasing DLC that day, thinking it wasn't a leak, alt costume shadow drop, and that's exactly what happened. Anyway, very awesome update here, especially for free. Sadly, people with the Switch copy of the game, such as myself, will have to wait a little longer for this update to roll out. This was sorely needed, as playing mirror matches, or as I like to call them, Arnies, against the same fighter made it very difficult to tell who was who. Each fighter seems to only have a single ult though, so large multiplayer matches with the same fighters might still get a bit confusing. Though that sort of thing, matches beyond 1 vs 1, tend to be less competitive and confusing anyway. These alts are really cool. I love how they're referencing things from the character's series instead of just alternate colors, and many are actually new costumes, like a new piece of clothing added to the fighter, not just changing the colors of what's on them already. I always tend to prefer that sort of thing to just color swaps, and I really dig it here. My favorite is Zim, as half the time in the show, Zim wore the wig and human eye contacts to blend in. Feels very fitting that he has this as an alternate costume. Gur also has red eyes in this form, which is a cool change as well. Although maybe Dog Gur would have been more fitting for this costume, but hey, whatever, still cool. Apparently you can still kind of see Zim's antenna in this alt, though I doubt any pitiful human worm babies will notice. Some people have wondered why this alternate costume stuff took so long to implement, and why they didn't simply do color swaps for the beginning of all the characters if the costumes weren't finished or something, just so people know who's playing who right from the start. Well, Rep said some responses to this are making it out like this was something slapped together in a day out of panic. Bruh, if it was that fast / easy to do, the game would have launched with them. But licensed titles aren't ever that simple, so I can take solace in this finally seeing the light. And then said, wanna know why alt colors aren't a thing. Alt colors can't be done unless the alt color actually referenced something directly, like purple Reptar. And Rep said, there you go. And Rep also said there was 3 alt colors for SpongeBob that had his palette completely changed to look like Patrick, Squidward, and Mr. Krabs. They were wholly unique and visually distinct. So it sounds like they did try just color swaps at first, and then Rep said alts had to be official. So there you go, they had to do official alts, as in these alts had to be from the source material. The devs couldn't just make up some new look for the character, and a simple color change would have been just that. This seems to happen with Smash sometimes too, actually. Though maybe a bit less strict, it does seem certain characters can't stray too far from their designs. Characters like Sonic or Pac-Man don't change their look or color scheme as much as most other fighters, and that probably comes down to dancing around the copyrights for those characters. I don't know the specifics going on, but I am aware of things like KC Munchkin and the legal battles that took place over the similarities between that and Pac-Man. This was way back in the early days of gaming when copyright and litigation for games was sort of a Wild West territory. But my point is, if they colored Pac-Man too closely to KC Munchkin, there could be legal issues there. I assume the same thing goes for these Nickelodeon characters. Change the look too much with color swaps, and suddenly you risk some obscure copyright issue with some similar looking character that's out there. Or the new form of the character might technically fall outside of the copyright for that character. You're no longer actually portraying that character if you change them too much, or change them in a way they haven't been presented before in their source material. Admittedly, I'm sort of just guessing here, but I'd say the concerns over this sort of thing, copyright issues, are why random palette swaps aren't always an option when representing certain properties, certain characters. Again, I prefer this anyway, as I love the references they did here. Alright, so that's our first DLC for Nickelodeon All Star Brawl. We still have the 2 more fighters following soon after as DLC, and then additional character DLC down the road as well. From data mines and leaks, we basically know the 2 additional fighters will be Garfield and Shredder. In fact, from the data mine, we had already seen most of these alternate costumes, though some have been polished up a bit, like we had seen Zim's wig, but having the proper human eye contacts to go with it seems to be new. Rep said, silver lining of all this is that the only stuff people will find is content that was explicitly meant for base. All proper DLC stuff is very much designated for a separate area/branch and isn't slated to start until now, basically. This was a little while back, but essentially Rep is saying that anything that was found in the initial data mines is just stuff that was supposed to be in base game anyway, and that the DLC, the further DLC, hasn't even been started yet, or wasn't at least when they said this. So anything that we found in the data mine, like the all costumes or the 2 additional fighters being Garfield and Shredder, were things that were already meant to be base game content anyway. So these data mines aren't exactly spoilers, more like teasers for stuff we were supposed to get from the start, but ended up slightly delayed from base game. Also, the budget, of course, went up to include more DLC, and Rep says the game will be a completely different thing 6 months to a year from launch. Adding these alternate costumes seems to be the first major step towards that, which is great, as Nickelodeon All Star Brawl as a concept is so fantastic, and I'm excited to see where this game can get with more DLC and more polish, and the devs seem determined to fix up the game and make it something really great by the end. Okay, so with a new update always comes more discoveries in the data for the game. We had already seen the unused Garfield and Double Dare stages in the game data, but now these stages actually have tracks to go alongside with them. Here's a quick snippet of supposedly the song that will play with the Double Dare stage. Pretty cool. In the original data mines for the base game version of Nickelodeon All Star Brawl, there were a lot of unused assets, some of which were for these character alt costumes, like SpongeBob's soda drink hat, but others seemed to be for other things. Some rather strange and hard to guess at, like this one with Patrick. Several actually seem to be for items, though. Nickelodeon All Star Brawl does not currently have items in the game, so maybe an item DLC will happen at some point, adding items into the game. We had seen crude versions of lots of these items before with the early data mine, but now many seem to be in a much more finished state. Check out some of these cool items. Maybe they'll add the items in the same update when we get Garfield and the Double Dare stage, and maybe they'll all happen when Garfield and Shredder drop. Maybe it'll be just one big update with new stages, new characters, and items. Or potentially they'll just portion out those updates. I have no idea. Anyway, there are some really interesting items here. We have some items heavily associated with specific characters that we don't have in the game, like Sokka's boomerang, or Sokka's boomerang if you're M. Night Shyamalan, or Squidward's clarinet. I doubt these items confirm or deconfirm any characters, but they show the devs might have at least been thinking about those characters at one point. The big one, though, is the SuckoMatic as an item, because it's from a series that isn't represented in Nickelodeon All Star Brawl yet in any form, Rocko's Modern Life. It looks much more finished now. Before it was basically just a crudely drawn, flat, 2D, like MS Paint looking thing in the old data mine, but now it looks like a full 3D rendered SuckoMatic. Also, a Fair Play Labs dev said that they wanted to get Rocko in the game. So considering this SuckoMatic item and that statement, I'd say Rocko is top tier when it comes to likely DLC characters beyond Garfield and Shredder. Speaking of things in the game's code that might point to future fighters, there's this claw. While I personally assume it probably belongs to Garfield for some Garfield attack, some people have suggested maybe it's for El Tigre. Over on Twitter, someone sent me this blurry image of a Miracle City stage, which would be an El Tigre stage. I'm leaning towards it being a fake leak myself, but I figured I'd mention it here anyway. When talking about Shredder and Garfield in the data mine, I should probably also mention there's one other character in a somewhat similar position to those two that's in the data as well. So there are actually 3 characters with unused portraits in the data: Garfield, Shredder, and oddly enough, Rocksteady from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They all have code names much like the playable fighters: Orb, Cheese, and Hunter. Rocksteady's is Hunter. Now, Rocksteady seems to only have a portrait, so unlike Shredder and Garfield, who have arcade lines in the data and attacks in the data, if Rocksteady was planned to be a character at some point, he isn't nearly as far along. I honestly find Rocksteady pretty strange to choose as a fighter. It would be our 5th Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles character, which would be a lot from one series considering what the other series have for fighters. And Bebop and Rocksteady are usually seen as a duo, so to choose one over the other just seems kind of strange to me. Also, Rocksteady uses a lot of real-world weaponry, like grenades and guns and stuff, though I suppose his gun did tend to shoot lasers in the 80s show, so I don't know if that would be okay to have him use a gun if it shoots lasers. But even still, seems like a shaky territory to attempt a fighter for. If I had to guess, one of 2 things is going on with this odd Rocksteady data in the game. One, they were between adding Shredder or Rocksteady as the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles villain character, and ultimately went with Shredder, but some data for Rocksteady is still in the code for when they were deciding. Or 2, maybe at some point they were planning to have bosses in the game, and Rocksteady would have been a boss, but the idea was scrapped before much work could be done on the character. Those, of course, are just my guesses, but I'd be pretty surprised if after Garfield and Shredder, we actually got Rocksteady as a future DLC fighter. But hey, this game has surprised me with some of its choices before, so if it happens, I guess we can't say we didn't have somewhat of a heads up about Rocksteady being a possibility. Personally, though, considering the Rocko comment from the Fair Play Labs art director and the SuckoMatic item, and considering Rocko characters are among the characters that were in that data mine for a bunch of random announcements for characters, Rocko being one of only 2 series that was actually on that list that don't have any representation in the game, Rocko's Modern Life and Jimmy Neutron, I think Rocko is likely the next character after Shredder and Garfield. Also, we now know there's nothing legally holding them back from adding characters from Frederator Studios. There are no legal issues with Frederator holding Jenny/Timmy back, and there's nothing legal holding Jenny back whatsoever in general. Considering how high they placed on the polls for most wanted characters, they also seem very likely for future DLC to me. We had speculated since none of the shows from Frederator Studios, such as My Life as a Teenage Robot or Fairly OddParents, were in Nickelodeon All Star Brawl, perhaps there was an issue there between Frederator Studios and Nickelodeon, but that doesn't seem to actually be a problem. However, actually getting Timmy Turner into the game might still be another issue. Alexis said the reason behind Jenny not being in base roster is really effing funny, and literally impossible to ever guess, but she can't share. She has also implied Timmy didn't make it in due to Nelvana, the international distributor of Fairly OddParents' early seasons. She is encouraging us to ask Nick on Twitter to add Timmy. So this Nelvana company, the distributor for Fairly OddParents' early seasons internationally, might actually be the issue for Fairly OddParents content getting in Nickelodeon All Star Brawl. Though we have been now encouraged to ask Nick on Twitter to add Timmy if we want Fairly OddParents content. So if you're into that idea, let's get pushing for Timmy Turner in All Star Brawl. Alright, so considering the comment about Rocko, the fact that Jimmy Neutron characters are in the data, in that big list of characters where the announcer was saying names of characters, I'd say Rocko and Jimmy Neutron characters are very likely as DLC. And Jenny being at like the top of the fan polls also makes her very likely. Timmy Turner and any Fairly OddParents content seems to be all up to these legal issues between Nelvana, Nickelodeon, and if there's enough fan demand. So again, let's get pushing people. Considering characters like Rocko, Jenny, and Jimmy Neutron all seem to have chances of being future DLC, I think those 3 alone would do wonders for making this game feel like a more complete Nickelodeon All Star Brawl fighting platform game Smash-like experience. Alright, well I was going to point out how the character select screen in its current state can fit 12 more characters, so 10 more characters after Garfield and Shredder are added. Whether or not we'd actually get that many fighters as DLC, I do not know. Probably matters how big of a budget hike they got for the future of this game. But it's fun to speculate, and with a potential max number of fighters, we now at least have some number to go off of when speculating the DLC. But for now, I think this video has probably gone on long enough, so I will save speculating what the future DLC could be for another video. Always fun to update my predictions as we get more information, so I'll do a new prediction video for Nick All Star Brawl DLC in the near future. Alright, well that's everything I wanted to talk about in today's video. Pretty cool to get a free update for alternate costumes, and I'm excited when that will drop for the Switch so I can actually try them out for myself. If you guys have any thoughts or comments about any of the stuff I talked about in today's video, leave them below.
Remember to like the video, leave a comment in the section below, and subscribe to PapaGenos!
Twitter, Patreon, Discord.